By given of a workshop session and regular meeting of the Corinth City Council. It is 5:47 on June 4th, 2026. We're going to call the meeting to order. First item is a workshop item, receive a presentation and hold a discussion and give staff direction on the cost of service and rate design study for the city's water and wastewater utility. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, members of the audience. This is an item that we included in this year's, the current fiscal year budget to do another rate study. You will recall when we had that discussion with the council during the budget planning process, we decided to do the study in-house. We've done it different ways over the years, as y'all know. Sometimes we used a consultant. This year we did it in-house. Leanne and her team have worked really, really hard on putting this information together, working closely with Public Works and looking at regional trends, and she's going to cover all that tonight. No vote tonight. This is just to kind of give you the lay of the land of where we've landed and some of the recommendations that look like are going to be coming your way in the coming months. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Leanne, and she'll walk through this information.
Good evening. So as the city manager mentioned, probably once every year we review our revenues, review our rates, and kind of look at it. But about every 3 years, we go through a full-blown rate study just to make sure that we have enough revenue and resources to offset some of our expenditures. When we do a rate study, whether we do it in-house or we do it with a consultant, it has to follow the American Water Works Association principles. So we have a model that we use, and we always have to make sure that it follows that, because if you don't do a rate study, then you really can't effectively increase your rates. So when we do a rate study, there are 3 components of it. One is a revenue requirement, so we have to determine what our expenditures are and how much money we need to recover from our rates. The second is to determine cost of service, which is basically look at all our customer classes and then allocate those costs to the customers. So which customer class is actually putting the most stress on our system, and that's how we determine the rates that we associate between those different classes. And then 3, once we do those, then we actually sit down and look at the rates, determine how much we need to increase in order to be able to meet the revenues or the expenditures that we have. So quite simply, the revenue requirement is we have to encompass all the expenditures. So it's what for our meters, distribution, pumping, storage, personnel, every cost has to be looked at. And then those costs have to be allocated out to each one of those customer classes that we have. Before I go into the revenue requirements, I wanted to just kind of provide a historical look at some of our budget and expenditures by category. And so our personnel have increased about $1.24 million from 2022 to what we're projecting in 2027. Now, probably for about 10, 15 years, we had not increased any positions. And about 3 years ago, we actually added 6 or 7 people to water, I believe some to water and some to wastewater. And so you kind of can see that increase in that salary. The other thing with that is that we were having a hard time recruiting. And so we did make some changes to the pay plan in order to help us with retention and recruiting as well. I believe that was done somewhere in 25. So that kind of explains the increase with that 17% increase. In operations, we increased it in the last 5 years by about 1.1 million. And you can see the shift where we were in 23 about 1.3 million, we increased to 2 million, and up for 2.5. And that's when we changed philosophies, and we were at a replacement. So your life of your assets was go through and replace it. We started focusing on rehabilitation, so started putting money on maintenance to start extending the life of some of those lines. So a line typically has about 40 years of life, so by doing this, putting money into maintenance, we were looking at trying to extend the life of those assets to 60 years. So therefore, not having to issue as much debt. And then our biggest expenditure is Upper Trinity. And Upper Trinity, and that's for your water cost, and wastewater, those have increased from 7.4 million in 22 to 8.8 million that we're projecting in 2027. That is our biggest expenditure in our budget. It encompasses about 48, almost 50% of the budget. And predominantly, we'll go through a little bit more explanation on that, and the majority of those costs are fixed. And so we'll kind of look at that in a moment. So when we look at our revenue requirements, we bring in our purchased water costs, which is $8.8 million combined between water and wastewater. We have to incorporate our costs for personnel, operations, debt service, any planned increases or debt issuances that we plan on doing within the next year. Look at some of our transfers out that we do for meters and some of our tech replacement. And so in total, our expenditures for the water wastewater fund is $18.2 million. However, we take out all the revenues that are non-rate revenues. And so those are water meter, water tap fees, wastewater tap fees, service charges, and so forth. And so when we start looking at our rates, we need to recover $17.1 million from our rates in order to make this, our fund self-sufficient. Now, once we started getting into rate designs, we realized that we needed to make some cuts within our expenditures so that we didn't raise the rates too much. So your expenditures and your revenue requirements already have a reduction of about $500,000. And so that includes $300,000 for pipeline maintenance. So we're gonna offset that for a year, and hopefully that we can see how revenues go within the next couple years. In utility billing, we just were able to cut about $20,000. We stopped the meter replacement transfer fund for 1 year. Now, what we do there is every 15 years, we have to replace our meters, and it's anywhere from about $1.5 to $1.9 million. And so we put money aside so that at the end of those 15 years, we have enough money to buy those meters. So we've stopped that for a year so that way we can kind of contain some of our revenue increases our rate increases for this year. And then like we did in the general fund, there is some turnover in water wastewater. So we went ahead and budgeted our wages and benefits at 97%. So we did a 3% salary savings. So that was about a $60,000 savings in what we budget. So that is in the total of the $480,000. Any questions here before I move on? I know I'm going really fast.
What's the difference in personnel and operations?
So your personnel
I
is.
know what personnel is, I
Yeah.
get what's operations.
Yeah, those are your wages and your benefits. So salaries, health insurance, dental insurance, and so forth, that is all encompassed. Anything that goes to pay for your employees. Your operational cost is gonna be your maintenance, your contracts for professional services, for street, concrete, all those things. And then water, wastewater, that is mostly your opportunity cost.
The salary savings, how do we achieve that? We're not cutting anybody's pay, right? This is through
No.
headcount changes or?
Historically, we have vacancies, and typically and for the water wastewater fund, typically about $150,000 to $200,000 of savings. So we budgeted 100%. With vacancies, we end up not
Just gap
spending
time
it.
and filling,
Yeah,
backfilling.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So when in situations like this, we can go ahead and we know that if we can budget it at 97%, we're not going to put the budget or the department at any risk of being underfunded.
Okay, thank you.
And I really wanted to kind of look at our opportunity cost and focus on those because it is, again, 50% of the budget. And so when you look at all the expenditures for water and wastewater, of the $8.8 million, roughly $6 million is fixed. So whether we sell, if your residents use any water or any wastewater is treated, if none of that happens, we still have to pay $6 million. So that is a fixed charge for us. And so that's a huge expenditure. And when we start talking about rate design and start talking about our base rate and volumetric, that's really important to kind of keep in mind because we have no control over that amount and we have to pay it regardless. The only thing that has, some, I guess, that can fluctuate is your volumetric. And this is how many gallons your residents are actually buying. And so for next year, we anticipate that to be about $2.8 million or 32%. Now, the other thing is that regardless of how much conservation efforts happen and so forth, we still have a big ticket to pay. So even if they conserve on the volumetric side, we're still paying the expense to Upper Trinity. Now, our current water demand, so even if nobody bought water, or if we have a lot of conservation and the usage of our water decreases, we still have to pay, and that's this demand charge, for 7.5 million gallons. And so that is,
I thought I had turned it off.
and so, okay, so I lost my, so on your demand, so we're paying for that. So it's the right of service, right? We have those peak days during the summer, and we'll kind of go through a little bit of that to talk about what a normal usage day, what a peak day is. And so we have to make sure that we have enough water when the hottest day of the summer is. And so that's why the subscription on there is at 7.5 million gallons. And then the other thing from this chart that I wanted to point out is that this right here is the pipeline usage fee for Lantana. And so at the corner of 35 and 2181, that's where Upper Trinity has a lot of the connections and pipes that are underground. And so for wastewater, we needed to expand. But at that time, and this was many years ago, Lantana was building, they had a line there, and they were not using it to capacity. So instead of us paying for the infrastructure to put lines in for Corinth, Upper Trinity and Lantana came in and said, hey, you guys can use it until we don't, until we're using it at capacity and that we don't have the room for you anymore. So right now, we are paying a portion of that fee to Lantana, and then Glenn spoke with Upper Trinity, and within the next 5 years, it's not in the plan that we will have to put our line through there, so I think we're gonna be good for 5 years. They're looking, you know, it might be 10 years from now, but at some point, we will have to make the decision of, you know, are we gonna have Upper Trinity issue the debt and we pay it, or are we gonna issue the debt and we're gonna pay it ourselves? That will come. But right now, I don't think Lantana is, I think they're about built out and they're not at full capacity, so I think we have a few years. Is that correct, Glenn?
Yes.
So any questions on this before we move on?
Sorry to ask all the questions my
No,
first
you're
day, but I
perfect.
figured, you know, these guys probably already know this stuff. So the 6 million fixed cost, so since that's fixed, does that mean as our population grows and we get more businesses that spreads that burden thinner, or does that then go up as our population grows, or is it some of each?
Right, great question.
I got a
So,
great
right here, yeah.
Don't bump him up this
Yeah,
early.
I know, I'm sorry. So it's all gonna rely on demand. So if your population increases, your businesses and more residents, and we're able to stay under that 7.5 million gallons per day, then yes, that cost will be spread. However, if the consumption increases beyond this 7.5, then we're gonna have to increase our subscription. Now, within the CIP, we have the water tower that we plan on putting in, I believe in a couple of years. And so our ability to be able to store and keep that water may help us within those peak days. The goal is to keep our water demand charge at that 7.5 as long as possible. But in the future, there may be a reason, you know, that right now we're well below it. And we'll kind of go through that.
So the ideal scenario is to improve conservation while also growing as a city so that it decreases the burden on everybody and doesn't make the usage go up,
Yeah, absolutely.
in theory.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Unknown caller.
Oops, now it's my phone. I thought it was on silent. Okay, so usage, and that was a good question and segue into usage. So when we look at our usage over the last few years, in 2020, we had 906 million gallons per day. I always say that incorrectly. And you can see we had an upward trend. The last time we did the rate study was in 2023. And we did the rate study for 24, 25, 26. And you can see at that point, our consumption was actually increasing. And then over the last few years, it's actually decreased. So right now, we're projecting about 979 million gallons per day. So that's really back here closer, it's less than in 2022. So I started looking at.
That's what I was thinking, was it a hotter summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started looking at temperatures during the summer and then also rainfall. So on those days, we had it was somewhat high temperature, but we also had low rainfall.
Yeah.
So that meant our consumption went up during those months. So the issue with this though, before I go into that. So, and then during this time period, how many bills we put out actually increased by 12.6%, so about 12,000 bills for that year. And so from 2020 to 26, we're projecting an increase about 7.5% in consumption, or 73.6 million gallons. However, the issue with this is that the rate study is this yellow. Because of this, we were on an upward trend. When Raftellus did the rate study, it projected that our consumption was going to be well over 1 million gallons per day during this time period, and we fell short of that. So the last few years, our revenues have been much less. So we started asking questions, we started looking at our consumption, and Glenn reached out to Upper Trinity. And it is not something that is just unique to Corinth. It is actually happening across the entire Upper Trinity system, is that people are actually just using less water. They're conserving more. The water is it's just an industry thing. So now, moving into 27 to 29, our rate model reallocates that. So we are looking at dropping down to about 997 gallons in 2027, up to about a little over 1 million gallons in 2029. So for this rate study period, we're looking at a bill growth of about 5.9% and a consumption growth of only 54.1 gallons. So this was this difference between what was budgeted within the rate study and the actual is going to has a big play into what our rates design is going to have to look at moving into the next 3 years.
And even though we didn't use as much water, we still had to pay.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
So remind me again, if we go over the 7.5, we can go over it, but only for what, a short amount of time, right? Before we are permanently, when they're told we have to increase it. How long is that?
It's 3 consecutive days.
That's what I thought.
Yes. And so Glenn and
We've
his-
never done that. Have we ever done that as a
We
system?
did. That's why we're at 7.5. That was,
Oh, I see.
that was before Glenn, that was in what, 2019 maybe? 18, somewhere around there?
We came
Yeah.
over 7.5 once.
We did one day. I think one day, and we reached out to some of the bigger consumers and said, can y'all conserve for a couple days?
Yeah, absolutely. And now we do have that in play. We monitor it, Glenn's folks monitors it. They reach out to our staff, and we have our list of key accounts, which is all the heavy users. And so we'll reach out to them and send them communication of, hey, we need your help in conserving. And they've been more than willing to help us during those times, so. Oh, and I also kind of looked at the temperature and rainfall that's projecting for the next few years, so that kind of validated what our rate study was looking at, our model as far as consumption. So I feel pretty good about, the numbers that we're using. So a lot of numbers. So let me walk you through this, because this is a lot of numbers, but it tells the story a lot better. So what I did is these are all of our customer classes. So this is how we allocate the water. And this is how many accounts that we have per customer class. So you can see, as your residential has the most accounts within that customer class. This is how much water each one of those classes use. So in total, we use that 900, and this is 2025 data. This is the average monthly consumption. So this is how much your customer classes are using every month. And this is what an average day looks like for your customer classes. So on an average day, it's not hot, it's not rain, we use about 2.6 million gallons. Now, over here, this is what puts the strain and the stress on your system. And so this is, when do we peak? When are people using the most water? And so on a peak month, we use 128, so that peak day is 4.2 million. So you can see from an average day, we're at 2.6, and right now on a peak day, we're about 4.2 million gallons. So even though this is what we may use 363 days out of the year, we have to be sure we have the capacity to meet that peak when it's needed. And so that is a key point to this. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is you can see those that actually peak, which is your builder accounts. It's not much of a difference. Your irrigation, your peak factor is 2.9, so they about double their consumption on peak days. The most interesting thing is your commercial and your multifamily. They are pretty consistent. They do not peak that much. So that means they are providing a constant strain on your system, right? They're gonna use all the water regardless whether it's hot, cold, it doesn't matter. So the more that you add on commercial and multifamily, they're gonna be using a lot more water because their average use per day is 8,796 for multifamily. Your commercial's 1,000, there's your irrigation. And you look at your seniors residential per day, you're only using about 276 gallons per day. So your commercial, multifamily, you know, as always, like we talked about when drainage, they just are bigger and they're gonna put a little bit more strain. So when we start allocating expenses and allocating, you know, those costs, this is some of those areas that we look at distributing those to. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is I ran this, the last time I ran this analysis was in 2020. So our total consumption has actually increased in those years, but you can see, and this kind of talks about that people are using less water, is that the peak has actually decreased by 12% in the last 5 years. So it just further shows that people are just conserving. Regardless of how many more accounts that we had 11% more accounts, but on those peak days, we're using about 12% less water. Any questions? One thing is because of all this data that we kind of went through in doing the rate study, talked to Glenn, and Glenn reached out to the consultants that help us. Because the consumption has decreased, we were able to move the elevated storage tank from having to be built in 2028 to 2029. So in the capital improvement program, we have shifted those costs, that 11 million is now in 2029, and that's gonna help us a little bit, because if we had it in 2028, it was gonna have a huge impact on our rates because of the debt service associated with it. There's advantages to moving it. We're expecting a reimbursement from the state for the I-35 relocation on 35. And so there's a few grants coming in for that. So we're hoping we can get that money in to offset a good portion of that $11 million. Any questions? So our revenue requirements. Like you said, we projected about 1 or 2% account growth. I didn't mention this, but Upper Trinity increases, they have said that for the foreseeable future, they're about 6.5% increase per year. So we have that factored in. Most of your health insurance, chemicals, electricity, on an ongoing basis, I have those factored in at 10%, although there might be some bigger increases on 2027 that we're still trying to work through. Our main goal is to make sure that we can maintain our operating fund balance at 90 days. That's 25%. We do not have as any staff increases projected in the next 3 years. We did factor in the planned debt issuance that we had talked to council, I believe it was about a month ago. And as I mentioned, because of where we were with the rates, as you can see right now, even with reducing that 480,000, we're still short about 191,000 when we look at the expenditures with the revenues. Now, we still have health insurance that we're waiting on numbers. We've identified some other areas that we can cut. So if some of the other expenditures don't materialize, then we'll just cut some expenditures to make the fund whole. Now, if you will see that we're short in water, but we're over collecting in wastewater. And so, it's okay, as long as overall your fund is in the positive. And we really want to continue, and we're going to talk about that we're still going to increase our wastewater rates, because in year 4, we have some debt coming in on wastewater that we're going to need those revenues to offset that rate. And that gives us a few years to get our water revenues in line, to not have to make too big of increases in the short term. The other thing I'd like to kind of mention is that we really want to just focus on 2027, because a lot of things can change. There's a lot of variables involved in the rate study for 28 to 29. So we'll evaluate them independently every year and make sure that, that we're in line. And so for this, when we start talking about what rates we're wanting the council to consider, it will be for 2027. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is our base fee. So our rates are a function on 2 components. One is a fixed charge, so regardless if a resident uses any water, it's that fee. And then the other is the volumetric that it's variable depending on what their consumption is. And so in order to stabilize your revenues and just reduce the dependency on that volumetric side, and some of you may remember, many years ago, when we had a rate study, I believe it was like in 2020, we really wanted to get to 65% because of how much fixed cost we had in the Upper Trinity side. And then you also have debt that factors into fixed cost as well. And it was too big of a jump for us at that time. So we started just slowly working towards it. And the council at that point decided that 60% was our benchmark, that at least we had to get to 60%. And so within our current rates, we're at 59.11%. Now, in order to get to 60%, you're looking at being over here somewhere in between 5 and 10%. And when we go over our rates in a minute, we are proposing a 10% increase on your base rates. Now, that's $5 per month on that 10%. Right now, it's, I believe, $50. And so, and the main reason we're really focusing on your base rate increase substantial over your volumetric is because of those fixed costs is number one, and number two is because we're continuing to get that decrease in consumption, and we have expenditures that we just have to pay. So out of our $17 million budget, close to $9.5 million are fixed. Regardless, there's nothing we can do. That's a bill we have to pay. Any questions before I move on?
Did we factor in all the new houses and apartments that are being built?
Some growth.
Okay.
And it's really hard because I took a conservative approach because you just don't know when they're going to hit. It's kind of like on the property tax side and trying to factor in sales tax increases and so forth. It's a shot in the dark as to when all that is actually going to materialize. So we do have some growth built in, but it is on a conservative side.
And on the other slide, you said that we found some places, some things we could cut, and if we were below that or not, but that we would cut them. Why wouldn't we cut them anyway if we found something we could cut?
Well, we can't do without them long-term, but it's just cutting into maintenance.
Get us through the
Cutting
year.
more into maintenance just to get us through this 1 year because we're short.
So they're not improved efficiency, it's really more of an austerity.
Yes.
It's kind of like this year's budget. We did some things and paused some programming, froze some positions
Okay, so
because
it's just temporary.
but we're going to need them back at some point.
And the one thing I want to mention is the more we don't move forward with our maintenance programs, then we're going to have to shift back to replacement. And replacement is much more expensive than rehab. So we can put a short-term pause on it, but if we continue a long-term on it, it's going to have some pretty significant long-term effects.
Did you factor in some, unexpected repairs or replacement in any of this if something should ever happen?
So if there's some big items that come through, we would have to come back to council and do a budget amendment and get it out of fund balance.
Just didn't know if some of this
He's got very
projection.
little in his budget, even on a normal budget,
Sure.
he's got very little contingency money. It's a very lean budget, and so when those issues come up, we'll just have to.
We've done it before.
This might be a silly question, because sometimes I'm hanging on for dear life when we talk about stuff like this, but, do the fees skew for, because you said the, commercial and multifamily obviously have more consumption, do the fees skew for them at all like they do in some of the other areas that we have? Because I know we just went over, what was it?
Drainage.
Drainage, and they are like $1 more than us
Yes.
per, so what does that look like?
It does, and we'll get
Sorry,
to it in future
getting ahead.
class. No, those are great questions, yes. So before we start moving into the rate study, I wanted to kind of show, what a lot of folks do is we look at what CPI is doing, and for government and rate studies, we look at CPIU. And so there's a US average in Dallas-Fort Worth. So your costs have been increasing, inflation anywhere from 4% to 8% over those last few years. We did not do any rates increases, whether base or volumetric, in 21, 22, and 23. So we left our rates flat. The last rate increase was in 2020. So even though all of our everything was increasing, and we know the cost of construction, everything that we were buying, we maintained a base budget and we did not increase our revenues. So when we did the rate study in 24, 25, and 26, we increased the base fee by 5%, 3% in 25, 26. And so even though we were a little bit ahead of what CPI is, we're really kind of playing catch up for not having done anything for about 3 years. So, any questions there? So what are our projected increases? So for our base fee for 2027, we're looking at a 10% increase for water, a 3% increase for wastewater. And then kind of tagging on to what your question, Lindsay, is that for residential, we're looking on your volumetric 3%, and then increasing commercial by 5%, irrigation by 7%, seniors, leaving it just like residential at 3%, and then on the wastewater side, on your volumetric, having that at 3%. So we are looking at increasing some of those a little bit more than what we do the residential side.
On the fixed rates, everybody's getting 10%,
Yes.
3%?
Yes.
Why don't we skew those can we not?
It is, because it's based on meter size.
Okay, and they're
Yeah.
bigger than us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Their base is higher.
But also what did you just say that we went over the other day? Wastewater? Drainage. We're going over that now. Okay, whatever. I'm lost, but I'm still asking questions.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah. So, but on that, that's based on the size, and we still skewed theirs to be a little more. What would be the hesitation in doing that on that portion of it as well?
Let me get to that slide,
Sorry.
and we'll talk about it a little bit more, because you'll see the increases in quite significant for some of those meter sizes.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, we've kind of shown what we need to stay in balance for 28, 29, staggered the base fee a little bit, but declining that from 7% to 5% and still continuing these increases. Again, I really want to focus on 27, because 28, 29, we'll need to worry about those then and see, but right now, that's kind of what we're estimating of what we will need to increase. So, take a deep breath. Any questions? And then we'll get into rate design. I know this is a lot of information. So, this is our base fee charges. So this is the 10% increase. And Lindsay, so most of your residential are at 5/8 by 3/4. That 10% is $5. So you have commercial that ranges anywhere between here. So some of them that have a 10-inch meter, their increase is going to be $169. So it is proportional. They will have that 10% increase. And so depending on what your meter size is, you can see some of those are pretty significant
To
increases.
put that sort of in layman's speak, what kind of businesses or customers represent the 10-inch versus the, right?
Glenn?
The 8-inch would be Glory of Zion. I don't know any 10 inches that we have in the system. A 4-inch would be the apartments. Most of the apartments are 4
Okay.
inches, and 4 or 6.
Is Glory of Zion, is that the only 6 and 8 inch.
It's
Wait,
actually
another.
an 8-inch, I believe, not a, and maybe it is a 10-inch. I'm trying to go off.
is that the only one we would have of that size?
That's the biggest one in the city because they have, it used to be Boeing, right? So it has that big meter and everything, so.
And then the rest would pretty much be apartments and like shopping centers, and those would be what?
Yeah, most of the shopping center, the smaller ones will be 2-inch.
And we do have quite a few commercial that are still under 5/8 by 3/4 as well.
Individual,
yeah.
yes.
So by increasing those base fees, in our base fee recovers 62.45% of our fixed costs, which we're moving in the right direction. And then the other thing is the senior citizens, we include 5,000 gallons of water in their base fee, so they don't get charged for the first 5,000. So looking at the volumetric, and again, your residential fall typically between here, so between 0 and 5,000 gallons is 7 cents increase per gallon, and then from 5,000 to 10,000 is 11 cents. We do have some that, tinker over here. I think Sam would say he's one of those if he were here during the summer months, during the summer when they're watering. The senior, you can tell from 0 to 5,000, there's no charge and no increase. And then again, from 5 to 10,000, that's about 11 cents increase. Moving into commercial, with the 5%, I think that's 5% that we said, 7.5. From 0 to 50,000, it would be 29-cent increase. And we have a lot that falls on the average here, but then as you can tell, it just increases as the tiers. Our tiers are built for conservation, so we have higher cost, the more gallons used than in the lower tiers. And then on your irrigation, that would increase by 45 cents for 0 to 50,000, and then upwards to $1.05 increase if you're 500,000 and over.
If we look at a water bill, does it break it out? Show us what part is irrigation and what part is?
So this is an irrigation meter. So it's a separate meter that some residents have and some commercial have just to water, so that they don't have to pay sewer. So they'd rather pay the cost of actually tapping in their meters.
I need to have it.
184.
About 180 of those.
Yeah.
Not a ton.
And then moving into our wastewater rate design, so it's a much simpler tiered system. So on the base, on the 3%, it would increase by $1.14 for your residential. Your volumetric would increase by 13 cents. And then on the commercial side, your base would increase by $1.61, volumetric for 16 cents. Now, we do have a higher recovery rate of our total expenditures on your base rate. It recovers 85.8, and primarily because with water, wastewater, we're on sewer averaging. So we take your consumption during November through February, drop out the high, and average those. So the cost for volumetric is very, very small. And then the other thing that we do is we cap how much volumetric we actually charge for 25,000 gallons. So in order to make sure that we can pay all those fixed costs, then we do have a bigger burden on our base rate because we have to pay those bills.
I'm sorry, you said you average it based on November through February? And why, aren't those kind of lower consumption months?
Yes, because you
Does
don't
that
want
mean
to
everybody's getting a
penalize.
discount?
Well, you don't want to penalize your residents for the water that they're using in the summer, watering their lawns, because that's not average or typical
Okay.
usage. And that's typical industry standard
Okay.
across, not just Texas, but anywhere, is to average those months.
Some take a percentage of your usage in any month. It's just, they may take 60% of your usage in any month. Winter averaging is pretty popular.
It's usually November 15th through February. So at Christmas time, Christmas time when all the family's there, you turn the hot water off and
And they leave.
I've got two teenagers that, I can see the meter spin.
So one of the things is once we do a rate is we look at what is your bill impact. So with the 5% and the 3% on your residential, we're currently paying $145. But on average, our residential customers spend about 8,000 gallons per month. So their bill would increase to $153, so that's about $7.88 per month. Obviously, the more you consume. If you're sitting up in the 50,000 gallons or so, your bill's gonna be a little bit higher. For your seniors, it's a little bit lower because the first 5,000 is in their base rate, so their current bill is $129 per month, and it will increase to $136, so it's an increase about $7.40. Looking into our commercial, our average commercial is about 31,000 gallons. They're currently spending about $451 per month. It would increase by $20 up to $472 for 27. And then irrigation, which is only water, they would increase by $18.97. They're currently at $247 per month, and they would increase to $266 per month. So how do we compare with everyone around us? So we always do a survey to compare with all Upper Trinity customers. So this is everybody that's in the Upper Trinity system. And the other thing that I'd like to say is that these are all rates that they adopted last year because they still have not done their rate studies and they have not made any rate adjustments for the current year. So we are currently right here at $145 with the proposed rates that we're recommending. It would move us to $153, so we would just skip over Pilot Point. So we stay within the pack. You have LCMUA, Crum, Aubrey, Sanger, and Argyle that are still well above us on the residential bill. When you look at the commercial, we're right here at $451. With the proposed increases, we would jump over Flower Mound and we would be at $472 per month. So again, we stay right in the middle of the pack with those changes.
How do you determine, like, is there like a way, some kind of formula that you use to determine, looking at the difference in the usage for commercial and multifamily and residential, and then determining how varied we're gonna be on the cost side, like on what revenue that we're bringing in? Like, how do we determine how the differential in those rates, what that should look like?
For our rates or?
For our rates, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like looking at these and I see how many are above us on commercial, and they're not, obviously not places that have a lot of commercial, but I'm sure they're still looking comparatively, like the ratio of commercial usage, multifamily, and at the revenue from that.
Yeah, so we do look at, one is we're not gonna charge more than what we need from our expenditure side. So we look at those expenditures, we come up with how much that's going to be, and then we do look at usage and so forth for commercial. We have very little commercial as well.
Sure.
And so currently, we're increasing those rates because they do have a higher demand, higher consumption, but they're still using a small portion of our system. So as that increases, then, we might be able to and receive a little bit more revenue off your commercial base. And so with that, we don't want to come in and just do a 20% increase or a 25, because we also don't want to discourage development.
Sure.
So we want to make some intentional increases to get them, get them in line, make sure that they're paying their fair share, but not overcharging. If that answers
And
your question.
just to fill in, because I think you had the exact same question I had, was it 2 years ago? It was like, hey, can we get our commercial towards the top of the list and get our residential down to the middle or below? And Leanne's point was there's purely not enough revenue coming in on the commercial side
Sure.
to make that shift. So that could change in the future.
It is changing.
But we could put the commercial all the way up to the top, and it's probably not gonna budge residential, but it will reduce interest in development, for sure.
And to piggyback on his point, we have 133 commercial properties, 14 multifamily. I mean, you would have to raise them maybe 1,000% to get them to, offset and really make any type of difference.
And a commercial property is maybe one strip center, not individual
Correct.
businesses there then? Okay.
Just like your multifamily, they're one property, so. That was actually my last slide. Any questions?
Can you go back to the residential one again? Read it up there.
We're still eating the processing fees for people that want to pay electronically, right? Or like
Credit cards?
Yes.
We absorb those.
And where does that come out of?
That's included in your operational expenditures.
And how much is that?
We actually, it decreased because we changed credit card processors to get that fee down.
Yeah.
So the transactions have, even though the transactions have increased, our fees have decreased because we're no longer paying some of those other fees.
Not enough to pay
It's
the difference.
right around about 100,000, I think, but I tell you, one of the reasons that I was against absorbing them for years.
Sure.
And in fact, it used to be absorbed, and then I got here and we put the fee to have the residents pay for it. But one of the things is that there's an offset. So we may be paying that credit card fee, but they're actually paying their bills on time, and they're actually paying them. They're incurring their own credit card debt, but we do see an increase in how much revenues we're bringing in because they're just putting it on their credit cards. And it makes it easier for them to do it instead of having to pay that recurring, $4 or $5 charge per month.
And prior to us eating that, we still had the ability to pay the same exact way. Like, it was just as accessible to pay with a card prior to us eating that processing fee?
They could still pay, they would just have to pay that amount, yes.
Okay.
And it probably takes less on staff.
So it's soft costs.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't take any manpower as much. I mean, yeah.
We
We've
could run a little
transitioned-
report on that. show
Yeah,
what
right.
the offset
Have to
is.
do a little something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because $100,000 is a big chunk of that $195,000, right?
Of what we're short?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have some other areas. I will tell you, and we talked,
gonna hear from
we did
folks.
that. You're gonna hear from folks. We have a lot of folks that were very vocal about not wanting to pay, because when you look at area utilities, they absorb it. We were one of the few that was actually passing it on.
And ironically, they still pay it.
Well, yeah,
just
so
not
they're just
showing
gonna
us
be
on
paying
the
it against their will instead of having the option to come in and pay cash.
We all pay it.
That's right, they spread that cost out. Someone's.
So, we will discuss more, we'll have some budget meetings, workshops during August. Right now, we are set, if council has no objections, to have a public hearing and action on the rates on September 3rd. So again, we'll do I believe it's August 26th that we'll discuss the utility budget again. We'll just do a quick overview about the rates as well at that point and where we are with our budget. But if you have any other questions.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but assuming we do raise rates, how is that, say from marketing, but how is that communicated? I mean, do we just see an increase on the bill, or do we just send out a little letter with their bill, or is there really an effort at education, right? Because that certainly makes the medicine taste a lot better when you know it makes you get better. So are there real efforts that go along with that and kind of pushing that? I realize that's not really an accounting question, but.
Yeah, no. I'm also over
She's over
communications.
communications.
He does everything.
So, we, in the past, Scott was not mayor at that point, but we would do a podcast or we'd do a video and we'd talk about why we were raising rates, the impact and so forth, and we would put that out beforehand. We will not raise rates during the summer because you're already having a high usage, and so we always wait till after the summer, and it gives everyone just an opportunity to kind of acclimate to the new rates. So any rates that we would do would be effective October 1. And so I assume we've got a lot of different marketing series that we're planning with our communication team. And so I'm sure we'll get Scott on there on a few to do as well, to kind of just talk about the reason that we need to increase.
If you have any other ideas, now, anything that's paper or printed or mailers
Cost money.
costs money.
Probably doesn't get read
If
anyway.
you've got any ideas on how to communicate that aside from the podcast?
We did like those, what we call buck slips one year where we put them in, but we found just research is people just throw those away. And,
Yes.
they don't even I don't look at the information, it's just like whatever's in there. In fact, I don't even get a mail bill anymore, I just have.
We don't either. We're just,
So,
it's auto-drafted, I don't even.
Okay. Any other questions? What direction? It says that you would like some sort of direction for this evening.
city manager?
basically just if anything in here scared you or you thought, go back and look at this.
I mean, it's uncomfortable to hear it.
Kinda is what it is.
I'm sure it is to present, but it is what it is at this
Right.
point. So we'll meet September 3rd. If anybody has any suggestions or ideas or anything like that, please.
The only thing that I might add is that from a consumer standpoint, you know, we're gonna increase this by 11. If we could like have an average of what the average bill is going to increase with this, because you know, you broke it down, but I didn't add them up.
I think
Well, it was
I think
the-
you had that at
What, $17?
$7.
Oh, total.
It's water and wastewater.
Oh, that's water and wastewater.
Water
Okay,
was
no, that's
5.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, we can
I
publicize
didn't-
this stuff.
I didn't know if that included the 5 from,
Yeah, my apologies, yeah, no, that's water and wastewater.
no, that's, oh, you said it, I just
A month.
didn't, huh?
Why
It's a
didn't,
latte a month.
Yeah.
in those 3 years that we didn't increase, but everybody else was, why did that happen?
Oh,
We
gosh, you're
we had a philosophy, I think, at one time where we were trying to adjust rates once every 3 years. And I think that plan worked. Yet every 3 years, it was a big deal. The increase was higher than had it just been done once a year. But we would typically over-collect on the first year and a half. We would under-collect on the second year and a half. And it would even out by that third year. And my guess is, Leanne, we were just on that same philosophy through those 3 years. The change is that, of course, inflation went through the roof.
Everything.
And all of us are still feeling that inflation. Glenn's budget with the water department, I'm sure, looking at these numbers, felt it.
Yeah.
And so now it's just a matter of we're catching up to the inflation that we didn't adjust for earlier.
I know our base is built on our consumption from November to February.
On wastewater?
Is there a minimum base? Like, does everybody have to pay at least one certain? You know what I'm saying?
Water you do.
So everybody pays the base fee, and then the second component is based on how much usage you have during those months, yes. Wastewater is just a much simpler tier structure, industry standard. You just typically don't do multiple tiers or have multiple bases because you don't have meter sizes and you're not really capturing how much wastewater you're treating. So to recover those costs, you kind of that's why we do the winter averaging and you look at the winter months because that's those months that you have the less usage. Because there's really not a good way to capture wastewater.
Sorry, and with regards to the water tower, and I realize you said that's going to be punted a year or two down, and I did see Glenn's presentation, but the idea of that is we essentially fill it up when we have extra water to use, right? And then hold it for high consumption days to sort of peanut butter over those usage. Is that kind of the,
And it helps maintain water pressure.
oh, and water pressure. I remember that.
The new water tower storage, keep it.
So we basically, on days when we're low, we can fill it up and to use it on days when we're high, kind of thing.
So it's by the hour, really. So before the 3 a.m. big usage hits, they fill up the towers as full as they get, so that it kind of, and then it drops down. We fill it up before you guys get home, take showers and everything, all the way up.
Okay.
And we do, so winter operations, instead of going to 25 overflow, close to overflow, we would drop it to 20 to keep fresh water. But during the summer months, we keep it high to combat the usage,
Okay.
the peaks.
And so is there an actual ROI on that, presumed over time, that it prevents, spiked costs, or just that it keeps us from potentially having that ceiling raised?
So for everybody in the Upper Trinity, it's all the same. It prevents pumping electrical. So it does save on electrical because you're not trying to keep up with demand. The pumps are off when everybody's using water. So there is an ROI for that. I don't know exactly what it is.
Okay.
And the size of the tank there's also the bigger, the more savings you're going to have out of it, but the more water quality problems. So you're kind of balancing the dollars with the water quality.
Okay, thank you.
I know you have a number for everything. A lot of them I don't understand. But Do you have a number correlated to the increase in compliance that happened when we started eating the processing fee cost?
Increasing.
Oh,
Compliance, like as far as she's saying, more people were
Paying on
paying, more
time.
people were paying on time. And also, how much does that affect us getting that money on Tuesday versus on Thursday?
I don't have that on the top of my.
I'm just interested, because if it's like, yeah, people were more compliant to paying on the day of, but we got it 3 days late because they didn't want their water shut off, or 7 days or 10 days late, versus, you know, I don't know. I feel like that would look differently based on what that compliance changed for us as far as what we were actually collecting over a long span of time.
I know we're carrying, and I don't know the numbers, I haven't looked at it here the last couple months, but the amount that we're carrying as bad debt has decreased, So we used to have we had a lot of folks that were on payment plans and a lot of different things that were happening. And so now we just have much more better collections. Now, does that have to do with people being able to pay credit cards, or everybody's, we were down because of COVID and people were out of work? I don't know. But there has been some shifts in that.
Because during that time when we started doing the processing fees, we started being able to take credit cards. So those happened at the same time.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not necessarily with the processing fees, it could also just be about the ability to take credit cards instead of.
No, I'm sorry. No, we've been taking credit cards for years, but we were absorbing it. It's just I can't remember what year it was, that we just actually flipped and started where we absorbed those fees instead of passing them
How
on.
much is the average person's fee per month?
Oh, gosh, your average bill is probably about,
140.
100, yeah.
The fee is like what, like 2.9% or?
Well, when we changed credit card companies, it actually decreased. Like, we were charging 3.9% because we were with a different company.
Sure.
And so, I can't tell you what the fee is right now, not off the top.
Art,
I don't have that number.
just to get to the brass tacks of what I think you're trying to ask, the $100,000 as a percent of the total water budget that we would pay would, if we remove that $100,000 and put it back to transaction fees, that $7.88 a month increase would be about $7.84. So you would potentially save 4 cents on my quick math, but it would cause,
Well, but these people, if they were going into a payment plan because they couldn't pay the $7.84 processing fee, when we increase it $7.88, theoretically, they would also have trouble paying that. Yes or no? I mean, that's what I'm getting stuck on, because you were saying more people are in debt and on payment plans for utilities when we.
Well, I don't know if they may be paying their credit cards off. I'm just saying, we saw a correlation to it
Yeah.
where we started getting collections in, once we switched.
I think that's always been one thing that I was like, I don't understand, because I feel like we're used to processing fees. So I don't understand how a processing fee for someone who's choosing to use a credit card would be the make or break between whether they pay their bill or not. Like, somebody would be like, oh, I can only pay with a credit card that's gonna do a processing fee, so just turn my water off instead of walking up to City Hall and paying
It may, I can
cash,
tell
you know what I mean?
from when the chamber started letting people pay off of their bills with their credit card,
Right.
our renewals went up.
But they paid their
tremendously
processing fee.
Because people could pay.
Right.
Right, you get it, you can pay it. Like, we have ours on ACH, so we don't pay any fees.
Paid their processing fee. Or on ACH, so it's being.
So a big,
They're not paying with it.
But people will pay a lot quicker when it's, I mean, to me, I'd rather get $19 out of 20 than $0 out of 20. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but they're still the same
Is there
access.
any other council member here that would want to consider moving the processing fees out of the bill?
No, because I think I was here when it was the other way around, and
My guess is if you actually pulled the numbers with regards to those data on the bad debt, and you did some back of the envelope soft costs on the labor burden on the people up here, it's probably pretty close to par, would be my guess. Is that a fair?
That would be a fair assumption.
So if that's the case, I just assume,
So we don't,
So we assume that if
Less
we're
sleeping
adding the
dogs.
$7.84 processing fee, that enough people will choose to stop using their cards, that there will be a huge increase.
no, I
in
think what
labor.
they're assuming is if the average monthly bill went from 788 to 784, but we moved that processing fee to the credit card process at the time that they paid the bill, that trauma is not worth the discussion.
Oh, you're saying if we did have the $100,000 in processing fees, it would only bring this down to $7.84 increase?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just not gonna make that big a difference. It's not gonna be, I'm just gonna say, it's not gonna be worth the headache of what you're gonna hear from.
I understand. No, now I understand.
We
I
did
just
this
didn't
in
get that it was
Roanoke
that small of a decrease. I'm not that good at
during
math,
COVID,
so.
Because we were trying to encourage people to pay on credit cards and not come up to City Hall and make us all sick during COVID.
Yeah.
And then when we said, well, okay, we're over this, let's put it back.
Because I was over here thinking we're like $195,000 that we're trying to make up. And then we would remove $100,000 from that. It would only be $95,000 that we'd have to distribute the same way we're distributing it to all those same people. So I didn't understand how that only equated to 4 cents a person, or per month.
Okay.
we spread it across.
So anything else on rate design, rate study? Okay, so next is to discuss regular session agenda items, and Tina, you have two that you've got
We
quick
look
questions
at 3 and 5.
Consent?
Yes, sir. Sure. Maybe I missed something.
No.
Just,
His map.
These are already in our budget, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait,
No, I just,
specific question, or?
Right.
No, I know what item it is.
I guess I'm like, what network equipment and professional, what are we getting from,
Oh, what are we?
and then on the fire apparatus, what are we buying?
I'm gonna have the IT guy say.
So we're,
On the fire.
yeah, the specific, just general question.
Just what the Presidio upgrade is.
Yeah, so we're getting to the end of life of our current switches, so we gotta replace them throughout our city. So yeah, we're working on the contract to get them replaced, and this is, but yeah, we'll be replacing every networking piece from the city. We have devices here, Public Works, Public Safety, stations. So we'll be replacing every, it's called a switch, what controls the network on each.
But it's already in budget.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so this
Consent
is,
item's gonna be already.
this isn't items out of, okay, that, I guess that was my question.
I get it, it's a big.
Making sure that we've already got it in budget. We're not asking for 318 more.
And these are all DIR approved vendors.
Yes.
We don't have to RFP it and blah, blah, blah.
I think the life on it is like 10 to 15 years. I think maybe 15 years for the,
I get it, understand.
5.
It's just time to.
Pretty good. How many phones you went through?
yeah.
Correct. And so, and we've grown since 2016, right? We added the public safety building, we've added Agora, added the fire station, and just staff has grown, and so our network has grown quite a bit since then. And so, correct. And everything Cesar said, I think he did an excellent job. Yeah. so.
And that includes the move to the new Public Works? Does that include the
Yes.
cost for doing all that?
So that one is correct. As a staff, we've got that all, that we're just gonna ride out the next few months on Public Works old equipment.
Yeah.
Get the new one ready to go, and that way.
When it's there, it's brand new, and, yep.
Yep. Well, that's my fault. I thought it was over and above.
No, I get it, it's a big number. You're 5, you're okay?
Yes, sir.
Did you get your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on the public hearing before we do that tonight? Probably not. The only business agenda item is going to be Mayor Pro Tem. My recommendation is my request to council is for Councilman Burke to be reappointed. So I will need a motion for that, but also in preparation of that, I was putting some thought together about either moving city attorney next to me or Mayor Pro Tem, and I decided to have Mayor Pro Tem sit directly next. So we'll have city manager, mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. And so what this means on your side is you guys are just gonna move down one. And I've already fixed it at the dais. And so that puts you next to City Attorney.
That was
Questions?
also.
That was probably strategic, honestly. I just
And for under dais kicks. And,
Right.
so, that's it. So we can take, do we have to start right at 7? Are we good to go?
No.
So if we can take 5 minutes for a quick restroom break, and then I'll see you at the dais.
Okay.